where we actually do try and build that connectivity and create better networking amongst those involved in outdoor sports. Just some quick housekeeping things, and then I'll hand over to Margot. So first of all, someone's already asked the question, is it going to be recorded? The answer is yes, it is being recorded. If you don't want your face in the recording, then keep your video off. But also just to be aware that it will be recorded, and we will make it available online after the event. If you can also please put your real name into your profile. It's really helpful. So if you want to do that, just right click on your name and you can change your name there. And it's helpful if you put your organization there as well. If you could have your microphone muted at all times if you're not actually speaking. So that would be really helpful, because otherwise there can be quite a bit of interference when the speakers are actually giving their presentations. Generally speaking, we love to see faces whenever we're doing this sort of event, and it's really nice to see people's interactions. But because we have so many people booked onto today's session, with 97 in so far, but over 200 people have actually booked into it, we want to make sure that the internet and the facility. So please, if you can refrain from having your video on when you're not actually involved as well, that would be great. We're hoping to have a really productive time in terms of the question and panel session. But to do that, and with so many people involved, we can't have folk just asking questions. So the best way to do that will be to put your question into the chat. We have a couple of our team who are going to be taking those questions and sending them to our facilitator, who will then ask specific panel members about the questions. We probably won't get through all of the questions in the chat, but we will try and do some sort of follow-up to that as well. When you are putting your question into the chat, it's really helpful if you can indicate who you would like in the panel to answer that question. If not, we'll try and decide anyway, but that's helpful if you say who you're referring that question to. So just a reminder again that the session will be recorded for those who have just come in, and also to keep your microphones unmuted. I'll hand over to Margot now, who will say hello from the It's Great Out There Coalition.
Thank you, Mike. So good afternoon, everybody. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the It's Great Out There Coalition. The Coalition is an international non-profit organization based in Brussels on a mission to get Europe active outdoors. Never did we think that our mission would ever become controversial, but there in the last few months, it suddenly did. So that's why we're now meeting digitally, and we're absolutely delighted to have been able to work together with ENOS so far to make this meeting happen, to give us a little bit of a replacement of the normally very nice physical meetings that we do. Therefore, to mention the Euromeet taking place in Silkeborg, and also, of course, the different trade shows organized in Munich, where we often meet each other. As some of you may not be as familiar with the work of the It's Great Out There Coalition, I'd like to just show you a short clip so you get an overall feel for it, and they'll immediately test our technical setup to share a little video with you. So there we go. So that's just a little bit of a taster for what we do. And now it's time to get really into our team. And to start off, it's my pleasure to introduce Sir Yves Le Lostic, head of the sport unit of the European Commission, who will introduce the European policy framework in relation to outdoor sport participation. So Yves, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Margot. Thank you, Mike. Can you listen to me? That's fine. You can hear me. Okay, excellent. So good afternoon to everybody. I would say on my side that it's very good to be back again in the environment of outdoor sport. We had the opportunity to, with some of you, to meet directly already on 7th of October during the workshop on promoting a greener sport in our regions. And I understand that this workshop today is a follow-up of this initiative. And I think it was a very good idea to have it soon. So thank you really for European Network of Outdoor Sports and its Great Out Coalition for this invitation. By the way, this invitation was for my commissioner, Madame Gabrielle. You invited her to open this online event. She would have loved to. Unfortunately, she was not able to do it, and she asked me to represent her. As you introduced me, as I'm the head of the sport unit in the commission. Unfortunately, now in each event, we have to speak about the COVID-19 and its consequences. And de facto, and you know all that COVID has terribly affected the sports sector, both professional and grassroots. By the way, we should soon, in the coming 3 weeks, I would say, have a study which will come out precisely on the economic impact of COVID-19 on the sports sector. So this would be an interesting document to read. But I would say that the COVID-19 has reinforced in a way the position of sport and physical activity in society. It has altogether made the promotion of sport and physical activity very serious and very urgent. Part of the recovery process we are aware of will be about increasing the resilience of individuals through a healthy life and active lifestyle, and also about boosting society's capacity to confront health threats. Generally speaking, I would say that at EU level, the power of sport and physical activity has been reinforced and will be reinforced. We are working these days of a future plan against cancer, EU plans against cancer, and very probably sport will be part of this plan, promotion of sport and physical activity, and it is considered to be much more important than it would have been in the past. Moreover, I would say that the pursuit of physical activity in natural settings has been increasingly valorized during this period. It is linked with enhanced environment care and a broader and more sustainable way of living. So the promotion of natural environment and outdoor activities for citizens is an example of the major role that sport-related activities play in the transition to a greener economy. It's about, and you know it very well, better than me probably, it's about reconnecting with nature, learning to protect it, and reducing carbon emissions. And it's very important, of course, to seize the opportunities for sport and outdoor-related initiatives to unlock available EU funding and to deliver on key EU policy objectives in the upcoming financing period. Maybe just some words about the European Green Deal, which is one of the most important topic, if not the most important now on the EU agenda, one of the most important certainly. It corresponds, as you know, to a Commission's long-term strategy on financing the transition to a climate neutral, green, competitive and inclusive economy. And it establishes targets and orientates the upcoming EU funding programs to achieve these goals. And as part of this European Green Deal, there is a modernized cohesion policy which set out a clear focus on innovation and sustainability for the future period, for the 2021-2027 period. And to this end, the majority of the European Regional Development Fund and Cohesion Fund investment will be geared towards the first two cohesion policy objectives, and they are first, a smarter Europe and a greener, low carbon Europe. Now, some words also about the SHARE initiatives. In this context, I would like to mention this initiative. Some of you are involved, some of you know it very well. This initiative was launched by the European Commission, by our services and DG AG, the sport unit, in 2018. The aim is very basic, I would say. It's to raise awareness of the role of sport for local and regional development, and also to build capacity and strengthens partnership between sport movement and local and regional authorities. This SHARE initiatives aims to empower these stakeholders to unlock the cohesion policy funds for the future period for sport activity. It's a continuous process of exchange, of knowledge exchange and peer learning activities between European regions. I'm happy to announce, I don't know, maybe you already know, but this SHARE initiative has been extended by 2 years, and we are very happy about this. Now, to conclude in a way what I wanted to tell you, I would just like to mention that this period is of particular interest and of particular importance for the EU sport policy. First, because we have, it has been 1 year now, a new commissioner in charge of sport, Mrs. Gabriel, with ambitions in the field of sport. And she has already been very active, very involved, very dedicated to sport. And in a couple of weeks, on the 17th of November, we will organize for the Commission, a high-level meeting with ministers, members of the sport organizations, the sport movement, and it will be an opportunity to exchange about the future of sport following the COVID, its impact, and also it can be an opportunity for the Commissioner to give her views on sport and on the future sport policy, and I think that this will be an important deadline on our agenda. The second thing I wanted to mention for the future is that we will have soon a new program, Erasmus, which is currently being negotiated. The negotiation is not finished, so we don't know yet how high will be the budget and what will be in the details of certain measures, but we know that 90% what will be in the program, and we know already that the budget will be much higher than under the current generation of program. So this will give us new opportunities. Everything we did under the current program, and some of you benefited already from funds, everything we did will be possible again under the next generation of program, plus new activities, and we will be much more open to mobility, to external cooperation in the field of sport, and we will develop a number of policies that we have been developing until now. So we just have to wait a couple of weeks for the finalization of this program. But it will work basically as the current one. So at the end of the year, there will be a call for proposal published with deadlines somewhere in April, May to be seen, to be finalized. But the basic rules will remain the same with more budget, except for the first year, unfortunately. And the last thing about the future is that we are presently renegotiating the future EU work plan for sport. This is an important document. This is not about funding, because the funding is part of the program Erasmus. This is more about organizing the cooperation with member states and the sport movement, and also about defining with member states and the presidency priorities for the future. And I can already tell you that without telling big secrets, that sport and environment evolution towards a greener sport will certainly be a major topic of the next EU work plan for sport. This is what I wanted to say as an introduction to your works. We welcome in the Commission this seminars initiative to discuss the power of the outdoors and to promote and to take this opportunity to promote good examples on how outdoor sports contribute to precisely achieving a greener and healthier European economy and society. I'm fully confident that today's discussion will provide good ideas of how to make use of the potential of sport and outdoor sports in particular to unlock future EU funding for innovative and clean sport initiatives. Thank you again for this invitation. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Margot. And I wish you good works today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction on the broader policy framework. We're very glad indeed to hear that green sports will be very high on the agenda in the next period. Then it's my pleasure to follow on that with a presentation of a piece of participation research that we've done with the It's Good Out There Coalition in collaboration with the European Outdoor Group. I'll just share my screen to go into the presentation. I've also heard here that my neighbors have decided in the last 10 minutes to start some work on their apartment. So there's only so much things that you can prepare for in the beginning. So I hope they won't be drilling too much during my presentation. So it's with great pleasure that I share these results of the research with you today that we did in collaboration with the European Outdoor Group. It's the very first time that these results are being presented to an external audience outside of our membership, and the first of many opportunities that we will be using to disseminate the work that we did. As the time is limited, I will only give you a very brief snapshot here and a teaser for a later publication, which we will put out later this year. The presentation will be shared after the event, so even if I go over some of these things a little bit too quickly, you will have some time to investigate the slides and the statistics that I shared in there afterwards. We will pick up any questions, but if we would run short on time, I promise I will give you your answer to your questions on email after the event. So, firstly, what am I going to touch on today? So I have 6 different topics that I would like to discuss. Firstly, some objectives linked to the research piece that we did. Then a couple of words on the methodology, some key headlines that came from the research. Today, of course, the COVID-19 effect, some conclusions and next steps where we want to go from here. As for the objectives, as you all know, the It's Good Out There Coalition aims to get Europe active outdoors. And in line with that mission, we were asking ourselves the question, how can we pursue it as effectively as possible? And that actually eventually led to this piece of research. The question is, of course, not just relevant to the coalition itself, but to society as a whole when looking at the power of activity and how to best harness it. With this piece of research, we aim to create sort of a benchmark for outdoor activity levels, looking at how we could, looking at who is active out there, who those people are and what are they doing, as well as identifying some barriers and levers for outdoor activities, because finding what holds people back and finding what empowers people to do more activity is of course going to be very useful for us to be able to get people to do more outdoor activity. Then finally, we also want the research to enable effective action to increase participation in outdoor activity. And that's not just that we want to do something that we want to do as a coalition, but also something where we want to empower other organizations to be able to be able to take effective action. Some words on the methodology. We did an online questionnaire which took about 15 minutes for people to fill out. And we set that out in 7 countries, so UK, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Poland, and Sweden. In each country, about 1,000 persons were involved, aged 16 plus. We used the national representation quota for gender and age to ensure that our results that we would get would actually give us a representation throughout all of society. And we screened out people who do no physical activity at all. Now, I know that we might get some criticism because of screening out people who have no physical activity, but we actually asked in the first question of the survey if people are doing any kind of physical activity, with a choice to say that they do some physical activity every 3-4 months or even less. And we only screened out people who said that they never do any type of physical activity. So we actually screened out a very small group of people, and we wanted to go in a lot of detail on the kind of activities that they do and how we can empower people to do more, rather than focusing on a society-wide study, which would then be very similar to the Eurobarometer, which is already done by the European Commission. We put the study in the field late April to early May 2020, which is around the period where there was most restrictions around COVID-19 in quite a few countries. We did take that into account by asking people to respond on basis of their normal behavior and not the behavior specifically during this period. It also gave us an opportunity to ask a couple of questions around the effect of COVID-19 and the movement restrictions on their behaviors. So I'll share some insight into that as well. I'll go over a couple of key headlines that came out of our research very briefly. More activity is done outdoors than indoors. Walking, running, and cycling are the top activities among Europeans, and walking and running are also the most likely activities to get non-active people outdoors. Secondly, we find that mental health is a key motivator for outdoor activity, and especially for women. We find that main reasons for not taking part in outdoor activity are around interest in other things, of course, but also lack of convenient access, and specifically also some other barriers, including lack of knowledge and unsuitability of activities or cost. We also looked into the least active group and compared what they were doing to the more active groups that do activity multiple times a week, for example. And we saw that a lot of those see themselves as not fit enough for outdoor activity. Now, let me go into a little bit more detail to make all of those different points a bit more concrete. Firstly, over 8 in 10 do some kind of physical activity at least weekly. Of course, this doesn't tell us that they do enough in comparison to the WHO physical activity guidelines, but it does give us an idea that the people that we did ask actually do some activity on a regular basis. We see that men mostly do a little bit more than women. We see that specifically the 25 to 34 age group is more active in comparison to other groups. And we saw that families with children under 18 are in general a little bit more active than the other family structures that we saw. Then going into outdoor activity specifically, so we see that 61% of the activity is outdoors in a natural environment. So we didn't just ask people if they did things outside, whether it's natural or not. We asked if it's outdoor in a natural environment, and 61% of the activity meets actually those criteria. Again, we see some key differences. Men do a little bit more outdoor activity than women in general. And again, the families with children under 18 actually do more outdoor activity than families with no children or children over 18. We also saw that owning a dog is a very good reason to get out there, because dog owners are generally more active outdoors than non-dog owners. Again, I know I'm going over these slides pretty quickly, but I wanted to give you this little bit of insight, and you can always revisit the slides after as we share them with all of you. So walking and running dominate outdoor activity. We asked which of the following types of activities people had done in the last 12 months. For light outdoor activities there, we understand, for example, going to the park or dog walking or things like that. And so that's a very broad category, but apart from that, we see walking and running activities across all countries actually score very high. Besides that, there are some local differences. So we see, for example, in Germany, cycling and walking and running activities are almost on par, which is really, really impressive and made us wonder if there are specific local policies in place to promote cycling. And we see, for example, in a country like Spain, not surprising, the water activities are a bit higher than in other countries, and specifically also higher than the cycling activities. We also saw that walking and running activities are what most are the least active would be most inclined to start doing. We asked which of the following types of outdoor activities would you consider trying, and there we saw that again walking, running activities are the highest one next to light outdoor activities, and then followed by water activities as things that people would consider trying. As I said, mental health is one of the key motivators for outdoor activity. So asking why do you take part in outdoor activity, we see that the main motivations are around health, around getting fresh air, around keeping fit, but also a lot of them around relaxation, connection with nature, managing stress, depression, anxiety, overall mental well-being. And we see in particular for those elements that women give those a higher valuation than men. In general, we mostly saw as well that 80% of the people say that outdoor activity can help to manage mental well-being. And that's a very high percentage, and I think a very big awareness in general in the population that getting outdoors is really important for mental well-being. Then going into some barriers. So we see some key generational differences when it comes to the barriers to outdoor to participation in outdoor activity. In total, we see a preference for other activities, which is logic if people prefer other things. But then again, it's only 28% that indicate that that's the reason why they would not do outdoor activity. So we have a very large percentage there on the other side. Then we see that main other reasons are difficulty to access near me, whether that's a perception or whether that's an actual inaccessibility. It's of course something else, but when we go deeper in the numbers, we see that actually most people use a car to get to their outdoor activities, which is something where we believe there is a lot of potential for action on a policy level. Then finally, some other elements that we see are around perceptions of outdoor activities itself. So not for people like me and not fit enough come out quite high. And specific for millennials, we see lack of knowledge and cost as very important elements why they do not go outdoors. So in general, it gives us this indication that we need to work on changing perception and raising awareness around outdoor activity, but also create new ways to access activity close to people's homes. Then finally, for the statistics, nearly 3 in 10 of the least active see themselves as not fit enough for outdoor activity. And this is really where raising awareness is vital. So when we asked them, why don't you participate in the following outdoor activities? We asked it specifically for the different activities and then combined the numbers. We see that specifically for this low active group, no interest comes out higher than the total. Not fit enough comes out very high in comparison to the total. And also an essential element of fear comes out. Fear of going outdoors, fear of injuries, and fear of heights there specifically that we have to take into account when we are trying to get people to be more active outdoors. As promised, I follow with a couple of thoughts on the COVID effects. So we asked a couple of questions around COVID-19 and how people respond to COVID-19 and their outdoor behaviors. And we see that 58% respond that they missed outdoor activities most. This was even higher in Spain with 72% in Italy. So in general, we saw actually that the response varied a lot dependent on how stringent the actual lockdown measures were, where Spain was very, very restrictive. We also saw some high numbers in France and Italy, where also the actual going out was limited in time. We also saw, and meanwhile, this is proven, that a lot of people are expected then, when we asked them the questions, to do more outdoor activity after the lockdown measures eased. And this was 31%, and we've seen a very large surge in outdoor activity as well since these lockdown measures eased. So we get, so that's actually turning into a big reality. There was a lot of cautiousness about mixing with others. I think everybody had to get used to the new reality there a little bit. And we're still trying to get used to it and trying to see how we can organize also outdoor activity in the best way. In general, something that was very encouraging as well is that 87% of the 7,000 people that we asked in those 7 countries said that outdoor activities are essential to people's well-being. And I think this really proves the point why we're all here today talking about the power of the outdoors. Then that brings me to a couple of conclusions. These results are very encouraging for future action. And there's a lot more where this came from with a lot more detail on different sports. And we'll be really keen to share the results with you as soon as possible. Secondly, we see a prime focus on health and mental health, also on the participant side. I think coming from organization that works on the promotion of outdoor activity, we're very aware, and from sports organizations, we're very aware that health and mental health are essential benefits of taking part in sports and outdoor activity. But that same awareness exists on the participant side is maybe not always as clear. We still have a role in raising overall awareness about health benefits of outdoor activity, as this is part of the knowledge that people are trying to look for. And we see that there are some significant barriers to outdoor activity, including lack of access, lack of knowledge, and perceptions of outdoor activity, which gives us very specific reasons to act and very specific actions that we can take in these directions. So, what are the next steps? For us, the next steps are to actually publish the results that I shared now a little overview of, to then further disseminate and to take action accordingly to reach increased participation in outdoor activity. We really hope that we will be able to do that together with you, and we invite you as well to help disseminate and to help take action on the results that we found here. So for me, that's it for now. I would like to thank you, and I'll just unshare the screen and see if I can answer any of your questions. So let's go to a couple of questions. Nico, did you maybe pick up specific questions for me to take a look at?
There were no questions in the set. Meanwhile, just somebody from Italy that there was a reduction of indoor activities in Italy. But maybe we just gather all the questions in the chat and maybe come back to you later and go on with Mike.
That's excellent, Mike. I hand over to you then.
Great. Thank you very much, Margot. I'm just going to get my screen to share. Margot, if you can let me share my screen.
Should be possible now.
Yeah, that's it now. So just really as a follow-up to what Margot was talking about, it's great that we can share some of the findings from a study that we did within ENOS. We did this over the last 3 years, and the study was really focused on looking at a method to measure the value of some of the things that Margot was talking about. So we know that you get these great benefits from being outdoors, from your physical health, from your mental health and well-being, but what is that actually worth? And how do we actually measure those things quite accurately? So that was the focus of our study. The study had 3 distinct elements to it. The first one was to do a literature review to find out, is there good quality evidence on the benefits of outdoor sports from a variety of approaches, whether that's for mental well-being or for physical health or for educational benefit. The second part of the project was to look at how we put economic value on those benefits. And then the third part was how we're going to test those economic values and how we test that using real live case studies across Europe. It's quite a big project, and so I'm only going to focus on really elements 1 and 2 today, which is about what we find from the literature review and then what we find from some of the case studies. The full mechanism to do the economic valuing is in our toolkit, and I'll come on to that at the very end where you can get more information about that. So in terms of the literature review, we spent a lot of time on this, and we found over 17,000 studies across Europe and the world, in fact, that were of interest to us and that had some sort of link between sport and outdoor sport, and then benefits to individuals and society. We'd managed to distill these down to about 300 really good recent studies that focused on the benefits of outdoor sports. And the document that includes all of those studies and all the detail in those studies is available from the website outdoorsportsbenefits.eu. And again, I'll put that website up at the end, and maybe we'll pop it into the chat box as well. One of the most prevalent things, and Margot has touched on this quite a bit from their recent study, and what there are more studies than anything else on, was the impact of being in nature and being physically active on people's mental health and well-being. And there was very clear data on that impact. And that included things like quantifiable amounts of reduction in stress, feelings of peace, but also that people can feel aroused when they're in the outdoors as well. And that has a big impact on mental conditions. So for people who have dementia or other mental conditions, then this can reduce the risk of it, but also can alleviate some of the symptoms as well. We all know that physical health is impacted by doing sport. So if you're physically active, if you meet World Health Organization minimum standards of being moderately active 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week, then you get a physical health benefit. But what we discovered with the studies that we looked at was that actually if you do that activity in the outdoors, there are enhanced benefits. So we know that your cardiovascular system will work harder if you actually exercise in the natural environment without realizing it than you will if you're in a gym. And also there's something about quality of air as well, whenever you're breathing in these environments. From these studies, we found out that there was a significant impact on the ability to combat certain diseases like heart attack, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. And that was quite quantifiable. So for example, all forms of cancer are reduced by being physically active in the outdoors by 7%, some much higher than others. Another area of importance was this idea of active citizenship, about the sense of community. And that was particularly come out in terms of the whole area of volunteering. There's a lot of impact of volunteering for a society from outdoor sports and from sport in general. Educational benefits were of real interest, and what we saw there was that there were a number of studies that showed that cognitive functioning and ability to concentrate, particularly by young people, was really enhanced through doing outdoor activities at the start of the day and at the end of the day. And in fact, one study, which was extremely interesting, showed that if you take a group of children who suffer from ADHD, attention deficit disorder, if you take them for a walk in a forest, for about half an hour at the start of each day, it had exactly the same impact as giving them the drug Ritalin to calm them down throughout their studies during the day. So we're feeding our children with drugs when all we need to do is take them into a forest for a half hour of walk. There were some studies on the impact of the outdoors for crime reduction and antisocial behavior, but not as many as we actually anticipated. We thought there might be more in that. So there is something there about, we know that outdoor sports and outdoor activities are used a lot for this, but there's not all that many studies that have studied this academically. And in terms of additional benefits, the one thing that stood out from the additional benefits was that people who participate in outdoor sports tend to do so throughout their life course. It's not something you do just when you're in your 20s and 30s or as a teenager, but actually you continue to participate right into your old age. And we had one particular study from Denmark that was about a group of over 80-year-olds who regularly cycle and really enjoy the benefits of regularly cycling. And there were a number of studies that looked specifically at older people. So as I mentioned, we then developed a methodology to capture the economic value of those, and I'll come back to that. But we selected 12 case studies from across Europe to test this methodology out on and to see would we find the same results from real live case studies as we did from the literature review. And within those case studies, we found, again, very similar sorts of impacts. The biggest thing that came out from the case studies was actually not about mental well-being, but it was about this sense of community, about developing friendships and building relationships with other people through outdoor sports. And that was extremely strong, where people felt really connected and had relationships with other people. And interestingly, that couldn't be differentiated from mental well-being, because actually we're social beings. And it's probably why we're all struggling with this pandemic and actually having to do our meetings and our events by Zoom and online, because we actually like to meet people physically and connect with them and have human relationships. So that was hugely important for that came out of the studies. But also the mental well-being bit was really important as well. And we used some standardized approach for measuring the mental well-being of people, and I'll show you some results of that in a moment. The other section that came out very strongly was about the connectivity to the environment. And Eve mentioned at the very start about the importance of the new Green Deal at a European level. And in terms of outdoor sports, this just came out from our case studies. Every single study, people felt this real strong connectivity with the natural environment once they started participating in outdoor sports. And also then about global environmental issues, because they started to realize this impacts on me and my enjoyment of the local outdoors as well. So I think that's something that we have a real strength for in the outdoor sports sector, about that ability to connect people to the environment and then make them more aware of local and national and global environmental issues. And we really ought to capitalize on that significantly. Physical health, again, was important, but actually from the participants' point of view, it wasn't the primary motivation why they took part in the activities. It was much more about the sense of community and mental well-being. The physical health was in a sense a byproduct from those other things. So just to give you an idea from one of the case studies in particular that I worked with was a community rowing project called Row the Erne, where a group of older people, mostly women, who row a traditional boat. There's 12 people in the boat, row it on local waterways. And what we found with them was using World Health Organization standardized questioning. It's known as the WHO5 for measuring mental health and well-being. We saw through that project that there was a 12.3% increase in their mental well-being using standardized scoring mechanisms. And one of the things that you can do is download from the toolkit, from the website, how to do that approach, how to actually measure those impacts using standardized approaches. We also found using a process to measure the positivity that they feel. We saw a 6.2% higher than the average positive affective score for these people, and also a 1.3 point or 2.6% lower than average negative affective score for the participants. So clearly there was very strong evidence for the impact that being in the outdoors and being active in the outdoors had on people's mental well-being, and that was quantifiable using this data. What we were able to do then, as I said, using the methodology that we created, was to start to put measurements on that, and we did that through a number of approaches. We asked the participants themselves, how would they value those things? We also asked other stakeholders how they would value the impact that it's having. And we were able to measure the impact of the health benefits. So for example, if we know that you have a 7% reduced risk of cancer, and we know how much cancer costs to society, we can actually put a value on the participation in terms of that reduced risk of cancer. We also asked the organizations and the project how much it cost for their project to run. And so as an example of one of the projects here, we saw that their costs, their inputs were around about 110,500 euros per year to run the project, but it generated a value to society of 261,000 euros. So for every €1 invested in the project, there was a return of €2.37. So it showed that there was a strong benefit in investment in outdoor sports and projects that enhance people's ability to connect with nature and to improve their health and well-being. So look, I'm keeping this very short. It's a whistle-stop tour of the project, because we do want to get into the panel discussion fairly shortly. But you can go onto the website, outdoorsportsbenefits.eu. You can download all the research data that we found, but also download a toolkit to enable you to actually carry out this project yourself. And do feel free to get in touch with us in ENOS if you are interested in actually using that methodology. So that's it in terms of the presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen now, and we'll go on to our next part of the program. So thanks to all of our panel for being involved in the panel today, but particularly a big thanks to Diane Crone, Professor Diane Crone, who's going to be leading our panel and facilitating it. I met Diane back in 2013 at our Outdoor Sports Euromeet in Slovakia, and we had a great time in the Tatras Mountains exploring that area, and also sharing knowledge and skills. But I've also connected with Diane over the years in between, and again, that's one of the values of our network. Our ENOS network is that we build these connections and keep our connections going and connect back with each other regularly. Diane is Professor of Exercise and Health at the Cardiff Metropolitan University. She has a wealth of experience. We could have had her on the panel itself, but one of the reasons I asked Diane to facilitate it is I know that she has a passion for this area of work, but also that she has a real knowledge and is able to put the right questions to the right people and sum up some of the questions in very clear ways. So Dan, I'm going to hand the floor over to you, and thanks again for joining with us again on this session.
Thank you very much, Mike. So we're going to start the second part of the webinar today. Just to say thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of it. I think it's been fascinating what we've heard so far, and thinking about the power of the outdoors. You know, we've heard that the power can be around physical health, mental health, social health, and from Mike's presentation there, we've also learned that it can have the power of economic benefit as well. So I'd like to start off this second part by handing over to Michael Bachmann, who's the Mayor of Winterberg, who's going to give us a presentation about outdoor sports in regions and cities. So I could hand over to Michael.
Yeah, hello everybody. Nico, thank you for sharing the presentation.
You should now can change the slides. Please try. Yeah, now you click or use to, yeah.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Oh. Yes. Yeah, no. Okay, my name is Michael Beckmann. I'm the soon to be mayor of Winterberg, and I'm a passionate biker. I'm proud to present Winterberg here in this webinar. Yeah, to Winterberg. Winterberg is located, we have a little problems with the presentation. Nico, can you?
I just changed the slides for you.
Okay, thank you. Winterberg is located in central low mountain ranges with an average of 700 altitude meters. And its 14 districts has a total of 12,000 inhabitants. The year-round tourism that mainly attracts outdoor fans is the most important economic factor in our town. It lives from the natural landscape combined with its urban flair. All this is completed by diverse indoor offers and high quality shopping, wellness, and gastronomic offers. Also, due to Corona, to COVID-19, the demand for outdoor activities, especially e-biking, has increased even more. Although we do not have concrete numbers, the amount of bikers has increased noticeable this summer. Movement and health is becoming more and more important for all age groups. Winterberg is also the first certified sustainable destination in North Rhine-Westphalia. Nico, please. Next. Yes, thank you. One of our main business fields is hiking. Hiking low mountain ranges offers possibilities for families and best agers, as well as ambitious hikers. The surroundings of Winterberg offer diversified tours through the woods, mountain, meadows, gorges, and viewpoints. We offer a variety of guided tours from cultural walks to half-a-day hikes. Also, special hiking trails are themed or stream trails are gladly used, for example, on the theme nature, conservation, mining, or climate. And the next slide for biking. Yes, thank you. Besides hiking, we focus on biking as second summer outdoor activity. Especially the free use of trails is an attractive offer also for citizens. Winterberg and its villages offer signposted tours for race bikers, mountain bikers, pleasure cyclists, e-bikes, and special interest athletes. Beginners, advanced bikers, and professionals all find the right offers. Every year, the pros compete against each other at the Dirt Masters, Europe's biggest freeride festival, or the UCI Eliminator World Cup. The bike trails also connect attractive points of interest such as cultural sites or gastronomic places. Guests visit us to experience outdoor adventures together or to compete with each other in sports. Locals find the perfect balance to their job life. And the winter activities in our town. Originally, Winterberg was a pure winter sport place. During the last years, we have developed into a year-round holiday destination. The Sauerland region offers the biggest ski area north of the Alps, the Ski Carousel Winterberg. Thanks to modern technology, we can guarantee winter sports during the main season. Most ski slopes are being prepared with artificial snow from effective snow cannons. There are more outdoor activities. More outdoor activities complete adventures, holidays, and offer diverse leisure times opportunities for citizens. Nordic walking, golf, disc golf, adventure mini golf, water skiing and wakeboarding, climbing. And to additionally promote the use of these offers, we have a guest card and a citizen card. The citizen card can be purchased. The guest card is handed to tourists who stay for 2 or more nights. Both these cards entitle you to free admission to most leisure facilities, indoor and outdoor. Okay. Yes, inspiring guests and citizens. With quality, variety, offers for beginners and professionals, focus on target groups like the Sinus Milieus, events in fields of the mentioned activities. With new offers, we combine free and paid offers and we integrate low threshold, also products for everybody, healthcare offers into the topics biking and hiking. These are the main topics of Winterberg. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That's been really interesting, and I think it's been interesting to see the different presentations so far, where we had some research from a European perspective from different countries, and then it's a study around the social benefits of outdoor activity, and now to see a country perspective from Winterberg is really interesting, and is a nice combination of presentations. And I certainly, when we're allowed to travel again, I've just put Winterberg on my list of destinations that I'd like to visit. If you have any questions for Michael, if you'd like to add them to the chat, we should be able to address those. I don't see any questions have come in so far, so what we'll do, we'll come back, Miguel, if we have some questions for you, if that's okay. And if we move on to the panel debate, can I ask the panel, the 4 members of the panel, to put their video on so that our webinar participants can see the panel? And while my colleagues are clicking on their cameras, what we're going to do in this next stage is we've got 4 members of the panel, and I'm really pleased to be able to introduce Melissa Devois, who is from France, from the outdoor sports development. She's an outdoor sports development strategist. We have Alba Godfrey from the European Health Network, who's a research policy officer from Belgium. We have Andrew Denton, who's the CEO of the Outdoor Industries Association in the UK. And we have Eki Carlson, who's the CEO of Suomen Latu, the Outdoor Association of Finland, from Finland. I'm going to ask each of the panel to just speak very briefly, not to introduce themselves, because you have their pen profile in the information that you've already got about the webinar, but I'm going to ask them to just present no more than 2 minutes, so it's very brief, a presentation or their perspective on the topic of the webinar, so the power of the outdoors. Then the structure of the debate will be, we've got just a small number of pre-prepared questions to just get the debate going. And then we'd very much like you to add questions to the panel through the chat function. And then after the first set of pre-prepared questions, we'll then go to your questions and hope that we can we'll have be able to answer those for you. What I would ask in the chat function, if you have a question for a particular member of the panel, could you identify who you would like to answer that? But if your question is generally for the panel as a whole, please indicate that it's for anybody, and then we can decide who would choose to take that question. So I'd like to start off by asking Melissa Devois to start our short presentations on their perspectives of the topic of the webinar.
Thank you. Hello, so yes, I am Melissa Devois, project manager for both outdoor sports and leisure for National Park in France called Calanque. So you have some in 2 slides presentation of this park. It's a park in the south of France, and it's near to a big city, Calanque, near to Marseille. And so my project in the national park is to define a plan to define the different positioning of outdoor sports and leisure, but not alone, but with all the users, economic actors and tourism, and with different sports and associations, etc. And my aim, my objective is to find a balance between the environmental targets, which are very important in the national park, and the other targets, social and economic targets, because it's a really attractive park, very recent also. It's a recent, a new national park, and so I try to find this balance and to have a controlled management to avoid affected place with the pressure of tourists and all the users, and to respect the different rules and to respect also the spirit of national park. You can show the next slide if you want, just to present the panel of the outdoor activities.
Just a short second.
There are second slide to present the outdoor sports.
Here you go.
Yeah, it's just to present in some picture some wonderful landscape, but with a lot of pressure. We have a part on the sea and a part on earth, so you have people everywhere.
Thank you. That's a lovely presentation and some great pictures there too as well. So thank you. So Alba, I wonder if you could do your brief introduction next, please.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for having invited me as well. I would just start by saying that for the first time since working from home for the last 8 months, my internet has decided to play up today. So if you have any trouble hearing me, I can turn my video off and maybe that'll help. So please do let me know. So I think it would be important just to start a little bit to understand my perspective, where I'm coming from. I work for EuroHealthNet, which is a not-for-profit partnership of members who are mainly national public health bodies, but also research institutes and other organizations. And together we work on public health, on disease prevention, health promotion, and reducing inequalities. And we really take a health in all policies approach, or systems approach. So looking within, but also beyond the healthcare system, looking at social and environmental determinants of health and ways to ensure the sustainability and the well-being of people, but also of the planet. And to go to my perspective on the webinar, so far it's been really interesting and very much in line with some of the work that we've been doing over the past years. So as part of our work between 2016 and 2019, we coordinated a Horizon 2020 research project called Inherit. And many of the findings that were presented already from Margot and Mike really tie in with some of the findings that we came up against in our research as well. So Inherit was a strongly intersectoral, integrated approach. And in the project, we aim to stimulate effective policies and practices and innovations that simultaneously improve the environment, health, and health equity, which is what we called a triple win. And we explored how these actions can encourage and enable behavior change, and what can be done to multiply and scale them to improve well-being in Europe and beyond for current and also future generations. And I'm hoping to talk quite a bit about this triple win idea today, so I'm putting it out there already from the very start. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Alva. That's great. I'm sure that will help with people start thinking about some questions for you as well. I'd like to ask Andrew to present his perspective on the topic of the webinar as a little introduction.
Great, thanks, Dan. Hi everyone, good to see you, thanks. As Dan said, I'm sure you've all seen our bios and our thumbnail, so whether you're with who I am. But as well as my work with the Outdoor Industry Association in the UK, I, along with Anna Strata, who's on this call, I think, as the Chief Executive of the EOG, we were the founding directors of the It's Great Out There campaign as well. So, and still stay there as a volunteer director. So it's great to be involved, and thanks with that hat on as well. I think, I just thought, well, let's try and find something that we're currently doing at the moment. So you've seen the background, and we've got our fingers in a lot of pies, and the project that we're currently working on today, and interesting the timing of this, something was released today from British government, is to do with the impact of the lockdowns on physical activity, and specifically, of course, physical activity outdoors. So the British government conducts something called the Active Lives Survey, which is the largest consumer survey in the whole of Europe, I believe. And if people want to link on that, I can put that on the resources. And it goes to great depth to say what people did, where they did it, how they did it, for how long they did it, regularity, etc. And it's part of the government statistics to improve physical activity. So it's where we really try and push our lobby work. That came out today and showed that despite a really good start to the year and pre-COVID, all activities right across the board up, particularly in adventure sports and outdoor sports were up for obvious reasons. Lockdown absolutely challenged that right the way through. Interestingly, the demand for people wanting to get active was higher. And if you're interested in getting that, we can send that to you, some of the quantitative as well as the qualitative results of that. But the general flavour was that it's been severely reduced, and particularly in people that are challenged to be active outdoors. So that's people in deprived areas, people who are challenged by poverty, people who are challenged by a physical or mental disability. So lockdown was not equal. There are people who were still on furloughed salaries, living in nice houses with fast broadband, able to teach at home and all go out for runs and bikes in the afternoon. And other people that were locked down in industrial high-rise flats in abusive family relationships and having an absolutely desperate time of it. So lockdown has certainly exposed inequality in physical activity. And I think, for just finishing the project that we're currently doing at the moment, which was to look at what happened after that lockdown, there was a big rush in the United Kingdom to the outdoors. And that was partly, I think, as a response because people were exhausted being locked up indoors, but also because they couldn't get on airplanes, they couldn't go on abroad, they couldn't fly, they couldn't go to hotels. A lot of the stuff was not available to them. So we had a government-funded project. We welcomed them to the outdoors, but it did bring up some of the challenges that I think we as IGOT and perhaps many of you listening will have, that one has to mitigate as new consumers to the outdoors. There were challenges with littering, there were challenges with pets, challenges with parking behavior, challenges with toileting behavior. A lot of people just didn't really know how to behave in the outdoors, and it all hit at once. There was almost a kettling effect because they couldn't do anything else. So 83% of visitors to our biggest national park had never been there before in the first month of July, which was staggering. And so the project we did was to mitigate some of that, to help introduce safer, better ways of engaging with the outdoors, then to help engage them and enjoy it once they understood the safety, and then finally to retain them so that perhaps they would come again rather than just going back to a bar in Greece. Not that I've got anything against bars in Greece, but my job is to get people active outdoors in the UK. So we've been working on mitigating, on engaging and then retaining. And again, that report will be out in about 3 weeks' time. And again, I'm happy to put a free link for that to download for anyone who's interested.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Andrew. I now have our last member of the panel, last but not least, of course, Eki Carlson. Eki, would you do your brief introduction for us, please?
Yes, thanks, Diane. And thank you, you invited me to this panel. As a CEO of Voluntary-Based Outdoor Association, Suomen Laatu, my perspective to outdoor life, like we call it, you probably call more the outdoor sport, but we call it outdoor life, are four things. First is how we are influencing decision makers to do better decisions for outdoor life, how we communicate outdoor life opportunities for the people, and what different kind of ways we are able to support voluntary people to do their work better at the local clubs. And of course, the fun part in my job and my perspective is that how we are able to get people out organizing different kind of sport and events, like my background, ice skating on lake, and that's the the beautiful part of my job, and I like it, and hopefully I get something out from this panel, and I'm happy. And I'm very excited to hear about these results of surveys and research. This has already given a lot to me. Thanks.
That's great, thank you, Eki. Well, we've already, before I move to the first question for the panel that we've pre-prepared to get things moving, it's great to see the questions coming in on the chat. So I think I'm just going to take one of those questions for Melissa. Melissa, we've had a question for you around mountain biking in the national parks.
Yeah.
The question is from Leo Studer. He says, if I'm not mistaken, in national parks in France, mountain biking is forbidden, except in the Cévennes, perhaps not pronounced correctly. Are there any plans to change that in the future? Are you able to talk about that and perhaps address that maybe in terms of access to the national parks?
Yeah, I could answer for the Calanque National Park, not for the other, because each park, national park, their rules. But for National Park of Calanque, we organize the different activities. It's not specific to ride for the bike, e-bike or other. And just to say that no, it's not forbidden in some place by some owners, yes, but not for all the territory. Bike and as on another out sports is a way to discover the different landscape, but not everywhere, and not with all conditions, not with for example, with some bumps or so different thing to change the landscape and to change the cross, the trail. So it's important in the national park to have to share the different place and to share the different strides between users with quiet behavior and respect. So we organize the different outdoors, not just for the bike, but for all the outdoors and leisure, to respect the rules and to respect the characters, the spirit of the national park. And just to specify that we have not low seasons because with the sun, and it's possible to do every day nearly sports. So we have not a low season, so that's why it's difficult to find a condition to have a balance. It's not black and white, but it's a balance with different criteria according to the space and season and to the species. And yeah.
Thank you, Melissa, and I'm sure that's not an uncommon challenge that many of our panel, many of our participants will have as well. The challenge of encouraging people to use the outdoors, but still to protect the outdoors and manage it in a way that helps it as well as us as humans using it. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go to our first pre-prepared question to the panel. And Melissa, if perhaps you can take that question first, given you're on the screen. So the first question is to all the panel members, and if I could just ask the panel, please keep your answers brief, because we've got some really interesting questions coming in, so I'd like to get to those as soon as we can. So the first one up, the Special EU Barometer 472, published in 2018, has highlighted that sport and physical activity takes place in a wide range of locations, most commonly in parks and the outdoors. So given the known benefits of being active outdoors, do you think physical activity in natural settings merits broader attention from a policy perspective? And if so, what role does the sector have to achieve that? Melissa, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, if my colleague wants to have something.
Does a member of the panel want to take that question? Okay, Alba, I saw your hand first, so Alba will.
Okay, I'm happy to jump in. So if I understand correctly, it's how do we encourage policymakers to pay more attention to physical activity in natural settings? right? So yeah, I hate to be so blunt straight away, but one way we can get policymakers' attention is to talk about money. So we need to show, and Mike talked about this already in his presentation, that investing in green or blue outdoor spaces is a way to use what are going to be really increasingly stretched resources due to the pandemic to bring multiple benefits. So this is my triple win: benefits for the environment, for health, and for health equity. So it allows policymakers to spend funds effectively. And within the Inherit research project, we actually carried out a couple of cost-benefit analyses on 2 case studies that focused on green spaces, and both were found to be profitable after a short amount of time. And I can just add one more thing. What this highlights more generally as well is the need to encourage policymakers to work across different sectors, because this is how it will allow them to develop these policies that harness the synergies of different elements, the health, the environment, and equity, and to achieve the multiple benefits.
That's great. Thanks, Alba. Andrew, do you want to come in next, and then I'll take then Eki?
I think the question just asked us to comment on whether we believed in it was true and the benefit of outdoor exercise specifically. And I think there's a lot of evidence on the augmented benefit of green and blue gyms, as they're called. And there's a really useful work by the, I'm looking at it over here, I was going to get it, I didn't look like it, but it's the Oxford Institute of Nature and Public Health by Dr. William Bird, with a ton of peer-reviewed evidence about why outdoor exercise has an augmented benefit over the simple respiratory, heart, cardiovascular as normal. I think the challenge, perhaps for us as a sector, I co-chaired the British government's sport policy part that was outdoor recreation. I was asked by the sports minister, and before then sport was literally only sport. We managed to get the wording changed to sport and physical activity, SPA, in current government strategy here in the UK. And I think that's absolutely vital to reframe that sport historically comes from an enthusiast, semi-elite, looking at trickle down and professional sport, and the health benefits, the mental health, physical health, the social health benefits of physical activity are not there. And so it's absolutely vital to get that whole phrase of sport and physical activity across from the beginning. And as part of the challenge, to finish off, you were saying, and I think it's partly historic, that we are a very, very diverse sector. Whilst there are millions and millions across Europe, compared to FIFA or the World Rugby Association, we are tiny with minimal lobby power. So it's about pulling together in seminars like this to work together with organisations so we can put that power in one place to lobby for it. And I think the final point is exactly as Melissa said, that climate change could be the engine that helps us drive that, because that is so much higher now on the agenda. And a green solution to physical activity that's driven by climate change hand in hand could be the way that we get that lobby higher up the scale.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I totally agree with you around the sport and physical activity. And thankfully now policymakers and organisations are now talking about physical activity and sport. It's good to see that that's happened from your experience as well. Eki, can I hand over to you for your response?
Yes. You were talking about that EU sport barometer, and by the way, Finland was most outdoor-oriented country in that study. 67%, I remember, were doing their physical activity outdoors. That means that we need these kind of studies to make the decision makers understand better how important outdoor activities are. Even outdoor activities and facilities are very important for the people. The structures of EU societies have not recognized the values of the outdoor activities, outdoor life. And I think that these kind of studies we have heard today are very important tools to illuminate the life to the right place in the national or EU level society, among, like Andrew said, among the other fields like sport, nature, forest, social, healthcare matters. I think we need studies, and we need to inform those studies to the decision makers that they can do better decisions.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think there's never been a better time now where we've got the evidence, and we've also got, you know, today's a prime example where we have, you know, over 120 participants from across Europe and maybe beyond who are interested in it. And I'm sure, you know, if you think about the number of organisations and levels and different job roles people will have on this webinar, you know, we've got a lot of opportunity to influence wherever we are and whatever we do. So I would agree with you, Eki. Melissa, have you got anything to add, or the others have covered quite a lot there? I just want to give you the opportunity to add anything if you'd like, or if not, we can move on to the next question.
No, not all things to add, but just to say that it's an opportunity to have a protected area near to city to discover the landscape, and from the Calanques sport and leisure. It's important to speak also about leisure. Leisure sports, it's important, a way to discover the nature and to connect to the nature by the sport and the leisure. Just
That's great, thank you. We've had we have some pre-prepared questions, but I think as we've got some questions coming in from our participants, I'd like to go to those questions first, if the panel's happy with that. So we've had a question from Mark Baldwin from the Netherlands, who's asking our panel members, has there been any experience to help deliberately move people from first-time outdoor participants to lifelong participants? I wonder if perhaps one of my panelists who'd like to take that question might just wave at me. I'm hoping one of you will wave at me. Okay, Andrew?
I should just say hello. Mark is actually my cousin. So although we're working in this sector, hi Mark. And that's really why I wanted, but I was noting it down when I saw it, and it's a massive challenge, and it's this going from a one-off experience to a habit, and no matter whether we're in, you know, Play England or basketball or netball or outdoor, moving it from that isolated experience, which can be a very patronizing interventionist sort of project, particularly working in deprived units. You pack a load of kids up into a minibus, you take them off to an area like the Clenank Park or the Mont Blanc Massif, you march them up a hill, they come back and they never do anything again. So it's got to be about, it's of course challengingly hard, but it's got to be about social pressure, about life pressure, life intervention. We did a big research project where we saw a massive dropout at the point Mark's saying at end of university, when people were starting first job and starting first family, but then a re-engagement around the early 30s when they had their own families. And again, I can put this link, it's a really big report. And there were reasons then to re-engage because they had their own family. So I think it's tying in constant touch points of intervention. So that's touch points with your doctor, exercise on prescription, social prescription work. It's touch points with work. It's providing running clubs or walking clubs or climbing clubs. It's using home intervention strategies at the same time. It's providing that constant joy rather than a prescriptive health. So it's, you know, you have to get outside for your health is just going to go absolutely nowhere. It's tokenism, it's imposed, and it's patronizing. It's about combining your social life, your work life, your medical life, and your balance, and then constantly touching to create this active life rather than specific promotion of a specific sport.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think that highlights how important the whole system is as well in this. So the system of the outdoors, the organisations that manage the outdoors, the governing bodies, and the politicians, and how to have that they all need to work together to ensure that people, that when they do have a first experience, continue that through the life course as well. And I think also when you were talking and when I was thinking about the question, we also know, and I think Mike might have mentioned it in his presentation, that if children are exposed to green space at a young age, they're more likely to use green space when they're adults. So it's really important to get those experiences at an early age. Eki, I think you wanted to come in to respond to that question as well.
Yes, we have the way how we are working at our associations. We are trying to find new ways to do outdoor activities. And one example is that end of August we had this event. It's called very. I don't know if this is right translation, but they spent one night outside, and we managed to get 80,000 people spend a night between the Saturday and the Sunday in the end of August. And what we have heard after that, we don't have the surveys that what has happened afterwards, but we know that the people, the shops who are selling the tents, they said that when we started this event 2-3 years ago, they said that they are selling five-fold time tents nowadays than they did earlier.
Thank you, Eki. Alba, would you like
to? Zwei, Sie haben keine Zahl genannt. Sie sagten, mein Mann und ich.
Oh. Can I just remind people to turn their microphones off, please, if they're not speaking? Thank you.
Thanks. If I can just come in, Diane, on a point you made, which I thought was really interesting, this idea of the need to connect with the natural environment, and that this connection is built in from a really early age. And so the outdoors needs to become normalized and embedded in social norms. And so one really important way to do this is to foster people and children in particular, their connection with the natural environment, to ensure they have early and stimulating experiences. And this is particularly relevant for vulnerable populations because they tend to be the most disconnected. And so education can be a key tool to foster this connection. So one way to do it would be to support efforts to integrate outdoor learning in the school curricula. So mainstreaming nature-based programs or getting outdoors already in schools. And we looked at a couple of examples of this actually in Inherit, one in the UK and one in Germany, in which we were providing kids with the opportunity to get outdoors, to garden, to gain knowledge about growing food. And this had a really positive impact on children's well-being. And more generally, this education can continue throughout lifetime as well, not just in schools, but training, information to adults too.
Thank you, Alba. Melissa, I think, did you want to come in as well?
Yes, just for me, it's not a short or longer time to rate or to discover, but it's more the quality of the visit on the activity, and it's that it's important in the a territory like Canon with a lot of people. It's to work on this quality, and why not to have some ambassadors to work with these people, sports and children and inhabitants, and not just children for the next generation. Yes, it's interesting, but for now it's also interesting to work with inhabitants, to exchange with these other users, and to work on the quality of the experience, even if it's just to see in a short time landscape, just for one time or two, and not regular practice, but to have a good experiences with a quality, not impact, and yes, the quality of experiences, it's very important according to me.
Thank you, Melissa. Yes, I think you're absolutely right, and we also know that teenagers are their exposure to green space and their use of green space is quite low. So you're right, it's not just about children and education, it's about again a life course perspective. As we're talking about young people, we've had a question come in, and Mike, I wonder if I can bring you in. This is a question that was asked, was directed towards you. The question is, how important are sports coaches for effectively engaging people, especially in the 15 to 21 age range?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I spent probably 20 years of my life as a sports coach in a variety of outdoor sports. So I do think it is essential that we train up people and also engage them with competent and qualified sports coaches. It's one of our charter areas in ENOS that we look at, is the importance of having competent individuals who can deliver these programs. And going back to what Andrew was talking about in our previous question, is yes, those are important for the initial interventions to get people involved initially, but actually for clubs and for social groups to have competent people who provide mentoring and support to the members to keep them developing in their outdoor sports to help promote safety, I think is a critical element that we can't ignore. It's actually a topic that maybe we could dedicate an entire webinar to, is how to improve professionalism, about how to improve environmental engagement, and that sort of thing within our sports mentors and coaches. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mike. We've had a question come in for you, Alba. The question is, how do we build the connectivity between the disparate sectors, health, environment and sport, to enhance the impact of investments and to multiply the impacts?
Okay, so we didn't look specifically at sport, but I think in general it's applicable anyway, how to work better across different sectors. So one way to do this, if we're looking specifically in investments, is to pool resources through joint programming and joint funding. Also to formulate policies which from the very outset aim to deliver on all the dimensions that you're seeking to impact. So the triple win, and also you can bring in the sport element into that too, because it's very applicable. And embed all of these different dimensions of sustainability, health, physical activity into impact assessments. So have the impact assessments look not just at sustainability, environment, but also at health. And we created a policy toolkit, which was one of the recommendations is specifically about integrated working. So there's a lot more detail there. I can put the link in the chat if you like, on specific things like creating institutional cultures that value and foster collaboration, allowing time and resources to have meetings, build trust, and build this common language. So I can point you to the direction of a little bit more information on that if you like.
I think that would be really useful for people. I don't know if you want to, if you've got time, or perhaps towards after the end of this session, maybe add it into the chat, or I'm sure it could be circulated afterwards for people. I'm conscious of, I'm just checking the time. We've had a couple of, Michael Beckman, I wonder if we could bring you in now onto the screen. We've got a couple of questions that have come in from your presentation. Mikael, great, thank you. The questions, they're on a similar theme actually. They're related to e-bikes and mountain bikes. So we're going back to our original questions from the panel. So if I can summarize them, because there's a couple of questions. It talks about whether the number of e-bikers has increased, or whether there are still more bio-bikers, as the question asker calls them, and also around illegal trail building. Perhaps to sort of summarize that, Mikael, can you perhaps talk a little bit briefly, because of time, but about mountain biking, electric e-bikes, and maybe the sort of, it goes back to the original conversation we had about sort of use and respect of the outdoors as well. Thank you. You're on mute, Mikael.
Okay, thank you, Diane. We have seen a visible increase in e-bikers actually, and sure, we reduce the illegal trail building with the offer of a legal trail park. We don't have conflict between bikers and hikers or hiking groups. It's not a problem here in Winterberg. In the town of Winterberg, there have we have a problem in this year because of the amount of the e-bikers with the passengers in the town, on the sidewalks, and the e-bikers. It's a great problem this year, and we are not clear to solve this problem. It's a challenge for us.
Thank you, Micah. I hope that answers the questions about the mountain biking. I'm going to go back to our pre-prepared questions, just giving the panel a heads up there. And perhaps, Eki, can I ask you, given the many challenges that Europe is currently facing, what are the key developments required to realise the benefits that outdoor activities can deliver? Can you answer that one for us?
Yes. I think the improving conditions of outdoor recreation, especially spatial planning in municipality level, at least in Finland, is one of the important things. And this job will be very hard after or continuing COVID-19. It will cause huge shortage of municipalities' economics. So, but I think that we have a chance because outdoor activity has rising a lot during the pandemic, and in Finland, urban areas, the physical outdoor activity has risen from 100 to 400% comparing the last year, and it depends on the survey and of course the area. I think that what would be the most needed thing in Finland is that we would need a national wide map for outdoor activities. We don't have that. We have very many maps. You are able to find the bird watchers, bird life watchers towers from one map and so on, but we don't have this kind of national map that you are able to find trekking trails, canoeing, bird watching, camping, wishing, mountain bike like we were talking about. Of course, here in Finland, winter swimming and so on. We will need that kind of thing. We will also need we were talking about that earlier, that somebody was asking that is there some evidence that if somebody has started a new outdoor activity, does it last long? I think that we need also a new way to inform for the new people, that the people who wants to start a new outdoor activity, you know, the kind of start kit where they are able to find the place where they are able to do it, what kind of equipment they are needing, and that kind of things, technical videos, that kind of things. And of course, in Finland, especially, we have every man's right, the free access to nature. 96% of our areas are under that law or many laws, which helps to people to fish and trek and do Nordic skiing and Nordic walking and so on. To us, it's very important that we are preserving the every man's right.
Okay, thank you, Eki. You bring up a number of things there, and I think particularly that the COVID situation in each of our countries will produce challenges, but equally will also produce opportunities. And you know, I think there will be many countries and many communities who have accessed the outdoors more so than they had before, and what we need to do, of course, is capitalize on that. But I'm going to ask Melissa next. We've got a couple of minutes left of the debate, so so the panel know, I'm just going to ask the pre-prepared questions that we had to finish off before we hand back to Mike, just so that my panel know what I'm doing. So Melissa, your question is, do local communities from the neighbourhoods on a social and economic margin visit the national park that you presented earlier to the same extent as others? And if not, for you, what are the existing barriers?
It's difficult to answer just by yes or no. So yes and no, there existing some barriers because some local communities come to the national park, not for the national park, but as a garden, a city park. So it's a challenge to explain that it's not a city park, but it's a national park with environmental ambition. And there exists some barrier to explain, to understand this target. But we try with different people with inhabitants, and we have also different economic actors. So local communities, it's also economic actors, and it's the first step is to make awareness that it's a territory without low seasons, and even they didn't see another users during the practice. It's that not that it's just alone. So it's the first step to know the other users, and it was the objective with the plan and the approach, collective approach, to have in the same place, in the same table, in the same meeting, to have an inhabitants, a local spot, yes, and the different naturalists and the different users communicate and to understand the different practice. So yes, there are different barriers, but it's not impossible to to have a common objective and to share it to have the challenge both to welcome and both to protect the nature. So yes, it's the most of time it's a problem with behavior, and we try to organize not just the rules. It's not the first solution, the first answer, but it's to make awareness and to try to work together, but just not the park against the team of the park against a different user, but to imply in local projects to imply them.
Okay. Thank you. I think you do highlight the challenges of that question, obviously, that pose the practical challenges of that. So thank you. Panel, we've got 2 minutes left, so I've got 2 questions left. So if I could ask Alba and Andrew to answer their questions within a minute each. So I'll go, Alba, you first. So if you eat into more time, Andrew won't be happy. So Alba, I'd like to ask you, you're involved in project-based research and policy messaging. Aiming to make it easier for hard to reach communities to get outdoors. Why is that important, and what is at stake? Should it not happen?
Okay, that's really difficult in 1 minute. So why is it important? I think I'll use this opportunity to get my triple win in there again. It's good for health, it's good for health equity, it's good for the environment. And it's clear that hard to reach communities benefit a lot from getting outdoors. By researching this, by translating this research into policy making, we help to create the right conditions for this to come about. So removing barriers like the lack of access, the lack of affordability that we've talked about, and creating enabling conditions, which resonates as well with what Mike and Margot and some of the other speakers were talking about. And if I still have a few seconds left, I'd like to just touch on one particularly interesting element. So we know it's important for hard to reach communities to have easy to reach outdoor spaces. And more than that, these spaces need to meet their needs and their values in order for the spaces to be sustained, supported, and really actively used. And in order for this to happen, it's important to engage these communities in designing the outdoor spaces, or at least some elements of the outdoor spaces, and to kind of co-create these spaces with them to make sure that they meet their needs and that they really engage with them. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up co-create and co-production. It's so important in any type of intervention that we're involved in, to involve the people that we want to engage with. Absolutely, I'm so glad you brought that in. So Andrew, our last question. So you have a minute left. What is the potential of the European outdoor sports industry to support participation to the outdoors from local communities, addressing physical inactivity and nature connectedness challenges?
Okay, thanks, Dan. I think, you know, we do have great potential and it's exciting, and the IGOT has shown that when they work together, they can engage at a local level. But I think more than that, and this is where there's the confusion, that's a drop in the ocean. You know, we turn over 11 billion in Europe, which is exciting until you hear there's 42 trillion of structural funding or whatever it might be. So I believe our position, and perhaps it could be all of us, whether we're universities or NGBs or NGOs, is to act as a catalyst, to act as a fulcrum, a tipping point, a leverage point. You know, I love Alba's triple lock idea. So how can we raise the profile by doing these small things that we do, whether it's 11 billion or whatever it is? It's still tiny in terms of what we need to address, and then use that to pressure, use that to lobby, use that for politics, because ultimately this will not work by local kids getting active outdoors through local outdoor shops or brands, or any of us here. We're not big enough to overcome the issue and to give the amazing solution that we all here passionately believe about. We need structural funding and deep societal change, and that's got to be led by government. So I think we're a catalyst or a lever rather than an implementer ourselves.
Well, I think that's a great place to finish, Andrew, just to, again, highlighting, you know, we've all got a role to play in this, whatever organisation we're from and whatever role we play in that organisation, and whichever country we're from. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank the panel for their contribution. I'd like to thank the participants for the really varied questions that we've had. I think we've more or less covered all of them, but I'm sure my colleagues after the webinar will let us know. And if there are questions that we haven't addressed, then we will follow that up and provide you, the person that you've directed it to will get back to you. So I'd now like to close this part and hand over to Mike, back to Mike for the remaining part of the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Diane, and what an inspiring and interesting set of answers and responses that we've had, and also the questions as well. Some very, very impressive and interesting questions as part of that process. Both Margot and ourselves are involved in the SHARE initiative that Eve mentioned right at the start. And actually, just going back on Andrew's very last point there, was about the importance of structural funds and about investment in the infrastructure and that co-creation piece where we engage with the participants. And one of the aims of SHARE is that we showcase the importance of sport in that regional development tool. And so I'm really pleased that Arthur Le Gall is here to sort of give some closing remarks. Arthur will introduce himself, but he's involved in the overall SHARE initiative of bringing the different stakeholders from the sports sector together within the SHARE initiative. So Arthur, I'm going to hand the floor over to you for the last few moments just to give us your thoughts on what you've heard this afternoon.
Thanks a lot, Mike, and thanks a lot to all the participants for the great questions and participations. I'm impressed, of course, by the discussions today, and I think this really paved the ground for very fruitful initiatives and projects in the future. So my name is Arthur Le Gall. I'm director at KEA, which is a consultancy based in Brussels and specialized in culture and sport. And among different things that we do, we coordinate the SHARE initiative for the European Commission, the sport unit of the European Commission. Mike briefly introduced it, but the purpose of the SHARE initiative is really to demonstrate the potential of sport and physical activity for local and regional development, and to unlock adequate funding and support for sport and physical activity and related initiatives. So, and of course, the discussions today were very interesting to me, because what we do as part of SHARE is to demonstrate how sport can really add value in a given, let's say, territory, in a given city, a given region. And we had an excellent example of that with the city of Winterberg, for example. So first, thanks a lot for sort of adding additional insights and examples to our usual pipeline of examples. The second thing I wanted to say is that we heard about the triple win today. I think it was Alba that mentioned this concept several times. But the more I heard the speakers, the more I felt that it's not a triple win. In fact, it's a quadruple or even quintuple win when you actually support outdoors activities. Because obviously you get people more active to boost sport and physical activity as a whole, but also you sustain the whole environmental awareness and sustainable management of natural resources. So there is, of course, a sort of environmental dimension. There is also a health dimension, which is clearly linked to sport and physical activity. But we also saw that there are many social and economic impacts as well of promoting outdoor activities. So I'm going to stop counting at quintuple, but there are many, many wins that outdoor activities bring here. I'd like to flag as well that this event was really interesting for us as part of the SHARE initiative. It's a great continuation of the cooperation we have. It's great out there in ENOS. We already had a webinar as part of the Week of Cities and Regions on promoting greener sport in our regions. And the examples that we saw there and the examples that we saw today are further evidence that are highly needed today. One of the key messages that we had today as well was that there is, of course, an incredible value here of the outdoors, but it's still to a large extent underestimated, and therefore it is also underfunded in many cases. So we need to sort of acknowledge better the value of the outdoors, and the studies that were presented at the very beginning of this presentation by Mike and by Margot are very useful, let's say, anchor points to build, let's say, a whole narrative around the power of the outdoors and how we can actually better support them as well. What I would like to flag as well is something that has been said by almost all the speakers today. It's the impact of COVID, of course, on our society, on, of course, the impossibility to perform sport and physical activity outdoor for a while. What this pandemic told us as well is really the importance, again, of outdoor activities. I think it was 58% of people said that this was what they missed most during lockdown. This is a very telling figure, I think. Also, what this pandemic is telling us, despite the fact that we are missing those incredible outdoor spaces, is that it's calling all European citizens and all citizens globally for a more resilient society, more physically fit individuals, more active and healthy society. And this, to a large extent, is something that we promote as part, of course, of the SHARE initiative, but that also the European Commission promotes through its different policies and initiatives. Yves mentioned the new EU work plan for sport, where additional focus will be put on the environmental dimension of sport, and I think this is also an opportunity for you to engage further in policy debates. And so I think also this event today is very timely, because the work plan for sport will be adopted very soon. So it's also a sort of, let's say, point to build further the narrative and the discussion with the European Commission on these topics. there is a space, let's say, for this, and we are happy to take it up as well in the initiative. I would like to flag as well that that was mentioned by many participants, but outdoors are a resource in many ways. So it is a resource which needs to be, of course, preserved and sustained. So we need to work with proper behavior from all the users, so to welcome newcomers and sort of educate them as well to enjoy the outdoors properly. There is obviously an access question. Resource is kind of meaningless if it's not properly accessed and by as many people as possible. But there is also a whole value and management perspective that needs to be developed here. So it is, of course, a resource that you can use for tourism perspective, for livability perspective, but all that needs adequate care and adequate management, and therefore it requires, I think the example of the Calanque in Marseille was particularly important in that respect. It needs adequate funding, it needs adequate policies, which are often multi-layered with outdoor associations, with local and regional authorities, sometimes also with national agencies in charge of these natural resources. So it needs a sort of multi-layered approach, but most importantly, it needs a very, let's say, targeted funding line. And that's what we do as part of the Share Initiative. We try to redirect, let's say, the debates around how sport physical activity contributes to, let's say, wider policy objectives, and why the funding programs which are allocated to these wider funding objectives should also include a strong sport physical activity, outdoor activity dimension. So, for example, when we talk about the cohesion policy, the cohesion funds, it should include also funding that will contribute to sustaining these natural resources so that people can enjoy it as much as they want to do it. That is very important because we are talking about a very large pillar of objectives of the Commission, the whole Greener Europe discussion. And I think that this Greener Europe discussion must be nurtured as well with a, let's say, a greener and more physically active Europe. So that's what I wanted to say at this stage. I really wanted to flag the sort of adequacy between all the very interesting discussions that we had today and the very broad policy objectives that are out there at EU level, but also in your cities and in your regions. Those objectives are largely shared across Europe. And there is great synergies to be built between all the discussion points today and different levels of policy making. So thanks a lot again to Enos, and it's great out there for organizing this very interesting discussion and for making the case again for outdoor activity in this very important context. Thanks everybody.
Thanks so much, Arthur, for your contribution there. I think just what you said at the end, a greener and more physically active Europe would resonate very well with our entire sector and would make us feel very at home because it's certainly something that we feel really strongly and passionate about. It just leaves for me to thank all of our panel, all of our speakers, and particularly Dan for her facilitation. That was great. Thanks to Nico in the background, one of our members from the German Tourism Forum, for keeping us on time. It is exactly 4 p.m. And we're just about wrapped up. We do hope that we'll see you at future webinars. We will continue to run these because we do want to keep building the connectivity between our sector and also between our sector and other sectors as well. I think one of the things that we will commit to within Enos, and I know IGOT feels exactly the same way, is that we will continue to be committed to promoting the importance and the value of the outdoor sports sector and the benefits that it brings to society, to our colleagues in the Commission, to other sectors within national and regional federations as well. So thanks again to everybody. We're going to show a short video just at the end as people leave, but it's really about our next event, our next physical event that we're planning, which is our biennial Outdoor Sports Euromeet, which is going to be happening in the city of Silkeborg in Denmark in September 2021. So thanks again for joining with us, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks a lot.
Just give me a second. Seems the internet connection doesn't work at the moment, but I just don't want to leave you without this great video. Here we go again. Hope you see this. And the last question of the panelists. Of course, we shared the link of the video. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.